Okay, we're making a pencil case. The first things that we need are 2 squares. This is a very simple way to make a pencil case. So we're only starting with 1 square for the outside and a square exactly the same size for the lining. And we also have a zipper that we've chosen to be a nice match. If you want, you can iron onto the back of this a piece of interfacing. This is interfacing, and it's a little bit shiny on one side, and that's like a glue that attaches when you iron it on. You don't have to do this. I'm going to, because it'll help you to see which is the wrong side and which is the right side of the fabric all the time. It also makes your pencil case just a little bit sturdier, but you definitely don't have to have interfacing attached to it. The interfacing has now been attached and we're ready to go. This fabric that I'm using is one that I printed using something called jelly plate printing, G-E-L-L-I. But you can use purchased patterned fabric, or you might be using tie-dye fabric or some other fabric that you've decorated. Now we're going to start by attaching the first 2 sides onto the zipper. So there's our zipper. It doesn't matter if your zipper is longer, because once you've sewn it into the seams you can just cut it off. Just if it's longer, always make sure that the zipper pull stays in the middle. Now here's my pins. I'm going to start by taking the main fabric, and if you've got a particular way you want it to fold, then now's the time to choose that. So sometimes, say you've got a tie-dye and it has lines in it, so you might want to fold it a particular way. I don't think it matters too much with this one. I've got my fabric here, and we want to end up with right sides together of the lining and the outside. We also want to have the right side of the zipper facing the right side, the outside of our pencil case. So have the outside of your fabric facing up. Put the zipper on top of it facing down, and it's lined up on the top of the fabric there. And have the zipper pull on the right side facing down. And then take your lining fabric and put it on top. So we've made a zipper sandwich. I'll move it down so you can see it more clearly. And we're going to pin this into place. So every time I pin, I'm going to pick up the pieces and check that all 3 of them line up. And then I'm going to put a pin going in that direction. So the head of the pin is at the same end as the head of my zipper, because that'll be easier to take out in a moment. Now we put the next bit of fabric down. Make sure they all line up. So that's fabric, zipper and outside. And we put the next pin. Yeah, so now we've got it pinned all the way across. And we're going to sew it just where I've put the pins. So here's the middle of the zipper, and we want to sew it on this side, just in from the edge in a straight line down here. Okay. Now I've got my machine threaded up with matching thread, see there, and I've got the bobbin threaded with the same colour. But what I need, because I'm sewing beside the zipper, I need to put on a zipper foot. And this is the zipper foot for this machine, but yours, there are a lot of different zipper feet. So with this machine, I just take off the foot that's on there and put the new foot on like that, but yours will probably be different. And be careful, because sometimes the zipper foot means that the needle will hit the foot. So if that's the case, you'll need to move the needle over. On mine, it doesn't. So I'm going to use the zipper foot as a guide on the edge so that I can sew straight. And I'm going to take out the pins as I get to them. And I'm going to sew forward, backward, forward, or a knot, or whatever your machine does at the beginning and the end. So my machine just does a little tiny knot, but if your machine doesn't do that, you'll have to go forward, backward, forward. And then I'll do a couple of stitches and I'll take out the first pin. Now, I can feel the head of the zipper just here, and when I sew past it, because it's a big lump, it will push the foot away and make me sew crooked. So I'm going to put the needle down and lift the foot up. And then I'm going to reach under my fabric here and undo my zipper. Then I'm going to line everything back up, and see, I'm just using my finger on the end here, and my zipper head is back here out of the way now. So now I'm going to continue on to the end. Okay. And cut off your thread. So that's mine. You can see that as I sewed, it pushed the fabric out just a tiny bit, but that's not a problem if it looks straight from the other side. If I decide it's crooked, I may unpick and re-sew, or I may just sew a second line that's straighter. So we can open it up now and have a look. We can see that that looks pretty straight there. Okay, we're going to do up the zipper again, and now we're going to pin give that a quick iron, and we're going to pin the other side. Okay, so this is my fabric now. We've got the lining and the outside both sewn to one side of our zipper. Now we have to sew them both to the other side of the zipper. And how we do that is by folding up one side, and we're going to line it up with the other side of the zipper. Take the lining and put it lined up. So we're making a zipper sandwich again. We're doing exactly the same as we just did, but see, that's where our original part was. We're sewing it onto the other side. We still have the back of the zipper facing the lining and the front of the zipper facing the outside. And I like to have my zipper pull at the end when I sew. So this time I'm going to sew this way up. Last time I sewed with the lining face up. This time I'm going to sew with the other side face up, because then we can sew it down like this and have the zipper pull at the end. Line them up and put a pin, and so on. Once again, I've got the pin heads at the same end as my zipper head. And now, the same as before, we need to sew down this side of the zipper. Line up your fabric using the same guidelines as before so that the two sides of your zipper, the two lines of stitching, are even distance from your zipper. And we'll have a little knot at the beginning, or forward, backward, forward. And then we'll take out our pins as we go. Sometimes I just want to straighten my fabric a little bit. Maybe it's bunching up a little bit as I sew. And so if you don't want to lose your spot in your fabric, just put the needle down while you do it. And then you can move things around and the needle will stay in the same spot. Okay, I'm getting near the zipper pull again. So needle down, press a foot up, reach inside, foot away from the pedal so you don't accidentally sew while you're doing this. And push the zipper out of the way. I can feel now that the zipper's way back here. Line everything up again, foot back down, and keep going till the end. And a little bit of reverse stitching at the end. So we've put in our zipper. And this is what it looks like. Now, we're almost finished. Okay, the next thing we need to do is sew the sides. And before we pin this together, we have to make sure that our zipper is undone a bit, because later on we have to turn it inside out, and so there has to be a hole the whole way through. If you don't have your zipper undone, you're going to have to undo your stitching. So we can face our zipper either way, towards the outside or towards the inside, but the two things that are important: it has to be folded the same way on both ends, and it has to be folded. Don't let it can't lie flat like that. We need to fold it. I like to fold it so that the zipper faces the outside. So have a look. I'm folding the zipper in half, and that's what I'm going to pin first. It just moved a bit, so I'm adjusting it again, and now I'm putting a pin in there to hold that in position. And now I'm smoothing it out from there, and I'll put a couple more pins, just so that I know exactly where to start there, so that it ends up lining up at the middle. So I'll sew down that side, and then I have to sew down the other side. I'm going to flip it over. Fold your zipper so that it's facing upwards. On the other side it faced upwards, so on this side we want it to face upwards. This one's actually easier because it's the open end of the zipper, so it's easier to fold. And then pin it. And I can feel that the teeth are on top of each other there. Smooth it out. I'm not worried about that. I can cut that off later if I want. No one will ever see it. It's on the inside. Smooth it out. Pins. And you can put pins going that way or pins going that way. Because we've got room for them to go that way, that's what I like to do, because they're they stay out of the way more easily. Now, what we need to do though is we need to leave a hole to turn your pencil case inside out afterwards. If we sew right down both of those, we won't be able to turn it inside out. So to remind yourself to leave a hole, the spot we're going to leave it is on the side of the lining on either side. It doesn't matter which side. To remind yourself, you can either put 2 pins or you can draw a line. Just show yourself where to sew. So we're going to sew down here. I'm not worried about my line being completely straight because my sewing machine will help me keep this straight. So we're going to sew down here and we're going to stop there. And on this side we're going to sew down here all the way to the end. So we're only leaving a hole on one side. But you can just put 2 pins, you don't have to draw a line. And the other important thing about sewing the sides is make sure you go all the way to the corner. Don't leave a little hole there or a pencil will fall out later. So we're going to go back to the machine now and sew this. Okay, I've changed back to my normal sewing foot and put my zipper foot away. So if you have been using a zipper foot and had to move your needle, you might want to move your needle back. Line this up on the side of the fabric. My fabric is pretty even here. If I had a big bit of fabric sticking out, if it was folded uneven, then I might cut that off first, or I might just sew so that I knew that that wasn't going to be a problem later. I'm starting right at the back there so that I don't have a hole for pencils, and I'm using the side of my presser foot to keep my line straight. My presser foot's quite wide. If you would prefer, you can use one of the lines on your machine. So there's a line here for 1 centimeter, half an inch, 1.5 centimeters. Doesn't actually matter what line you use, as long as you use a line to keep you straight. And that might depend on whether the side of your fabric's a bit wonky and with what you're comfortable with. So let's start. My pins are out of the way, so I don't really have to remove them as I go, but if they're in your way, then take them off. Now, as I get to the zipper, the needle really shouldn't break if it hits the zipper because they're nylon, not metal. But what you can do is take your foot off the pedal, and just for the really hard bit, you can use the winder at the side of your machine here and turn it so that this little bit is very slow, and then it's less likely to break a needle. We've gone over the actual zipper bit, so now we can keep going. All the way to the end. Remember, we don't want to leave any holes. And forward, backward at the end. Trim your ends. Always keep all your stitching neat by trimming your ends. And then we sew the same way on the other side, but this time leaving a hole. I like the hole to be as small as possible, so I'm actually going a little bit further than the line I left, but that really depends on what you're comfortable with. And we take out the pins. Now, to have neat corners, when we turn this in a minute, we can just snip off the excess fabric, because when you turn this inside out, all that fabric has to fit into the corner. So it's a good idea to just, I'm not going to snip there, snip those off, but be very careful not to snip the stitching. And I'm also going to snip off a little bit of this zipper so that it's a bit less bulky, and I'll definitely snip it off here. If your zipper sticks out even further, you can cut that end off now. And if that's the case, you also might want to go forward, backward, forward over the actual zipper a little bit more, just to give it a bit of extra strength. Now, let's turn our pencil case inside out. And while I've got the chance to get my fingers in here, I might as well poke my corners out so that they're nice and neat. Okay, this is the mark that I used before that's gone through, but that is a special pen that just rubs off with water, so I'll rub that off later. Now we're going to sew up this last little bit, and if you use matching thread, you will hardly even notice that. So I'm going to change my thread to yellow. Okay, so I've changed to yellow thread so that it matches the lining, and you could hand stitch this and it will be completely invisible, but it's in the side and on the inside, so you really won't see it. Now, this is all like this. So we have to fold it in to make it match the rest. And I just like to fold it in and stretch it to straighten it. And it's a good idea then to iron it. I've just got a little roller here that I can use instead of the iron, but normally I would get up and go to the iron to give that a really nice crease. And you can also put in a couple of pins. Even though we're machine stitching this, and if you look for it you'll be able to see it, the neater you do this, the better. So I've got a couple of pins there too, and I'm going to start, I can see that my stitching ended with the sewing machine, ended there. So I'm going to start just a little bit above that. So my stitching ended there. I've got the pin there. I'm going to start just a little bit above that to seal up the hole, and I'm going to just use on my presser foot, I've got a little tiny line there that I can follow to stay straight but really close to the edge. So I'm going to use that to stay close to the edge, and as always, forward, backward, beginning and end. You want this to be nice and neat because it is the only stitching really that you'll see. If that pin's in the way, make sure that you take it out when you get to it. Mine was further in, so I didn't really have to. I go all the way to the end and forward, backward at the end, and we're finished. The only thing left to do now is make sure any of your ends are trimmed. So, see these bits? I'll trim those off really close. So you see how neat that is? Because it's in the pencil case, and especially because it's in the side, not in the bottom, you won't really notice that. I'll erase that later. We turn this around and poke it in and just neaten up these edge bits. And there we go, we've finished our pencil case.